John, to introduce our speaker. I wish I had marked it.
Happy to introduce Jim Hershey. I think many of you know him. Jim hails from Mount Joy Township, where he has been the owner and operator of a family-owned farm since 1977. It's 500 acres of corn and beans and wheat and cover crops. Also includes 1.7 million chicken broiler operation and 6,000 wean to market or wean to finish hogs. Mm-hmm. And you're a certified, what does CFO say? Concentrated animal feeding operation.
You got it.
Okay. Most of us who've been to any of the recent installation dinners, thank you, have been in Harvest View Barn, which that's the farm we're talking about. So Jim has been involved with no-till and cover crop for a very long time, and I'm going to let him fill you in all the details, but he is a founding member of the PA No-Till Alliance, which got started in 2005. He has served as their president since 2010. He's on their board of directors and is a great advocate for what I think is one of the best things we can do from a farming perspective, no-till and cover crop. So Jim, please.
Hey, thank you, John, for that kind introduction. Yeah, so as John mentioned, and I'm sure you might recognize that shot there, but it is a bird's eye view of our operation out there off of Sunnyburn Road. You see the brown barn there in the foreground. That there is the Harvest View barn that Jews have had your meetings at from time to time. But then there in back of that, you'll see the 6 poultry barns, 1.7 million broiler chickens a year we produce for Purdue. So if you have eaten Purdue chicken, likely, maybe, some of it came from ours farm, and hopefully it was a good experience for you. We also have a large solar array system that generates 210 kW watts of power to our farming operation. It does not quite generate enough, but a large portion of that comes from that solar system. So John mentioned we raise corn, soybeans, and wheat, and I include cover crops in that because of what I'm promoting and what I'm an advocate for is to keep the soil covered 365 days a year. I'll talk more about the advantages of that as we move through this, but Lancaster County is part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Many of you hear that in the news many times. Sometimes there doesn't a week go by that you'll see Chesapeake Bay in the news. So farmers play a very important part of that. So the Chesapeake Bay covers 64,000 square miles, and that includes some land base up into New York State, down into Virginia, and parts of Delaware. So it has been known that Lancaster County has the most impaired streams in Pennsylvania. So if you know what impaired means, I know John understands that, and many of you do. It does not meet the standards for healthy water. And so Lancaster County has gotten a lot of attention. Lancaster County has the most livestock units in the state of Pennsylvania. And so with that comes responsibilities. However, there has been a lot of money been given to grants to implement BMPs, which is best management practices. Some of those include manure storages. Some of it includes conservation work out in your field to control your water, control your runoff, control your nutrients. So it's our responsibility as farmers to manage our soil and manage our nutrients. If you guys have, maybe you can't see so well over there. If you just want to move closer, you can. But there's you see two different contrasts on this slide here. The one on the bottom right is what we're trying to eliminate. You see there's a lot of open ground. You see there's water running down through the field after a rain event, and likely that's headed to a stream. The one in the top left is what we as farmers in Pennsylvania, Lancaster County are proud of. We want to keep our soils covered. We want to keep all the nutrients. We want to keep all the water on our soils. So some of the things I'm going to cover today is soil health, talking about what we do in order to improve our soil health and what soil health actually is. I'm going to cover no-till, cover crops, and then the value of cover crops and the biomass that we receive from that. So soil health is defined as a continued capacity of the soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animal, and humans. And yes, humans is all a part of this system, because if we don't raise our crops in a way that is healthy, it actually affects the nutrient value, the nutrient density of our food. Soil is a living dynamic system that acts as a mediator between agriculture production and an environment. And it improves soil, enhanced nutrient recycling. It increases water infiltration, availability, and also filters and buffers the pollutants. No-till, a few things. It increases soil aggregation. So what is soil aggregation? I might be giving you a short course on things, soil health, and things that you haven't heard of before, but I am so proud of the fact that you are no-tilling your garden. And that's one thing, as the No-Till Alliance, we are actually promoting no-till in gardens. If you get a chance to go to the State Farm Show, which will be in January, we will have some raised garden beds there that we have been demonstrating how you can use no-till and you can use cover crop even in your garden. And you're a great pioneer. Thanks for doing that. So it also increases water infiltration. So I'll talk about that more later, but carbon sequestration is a big, big topic that you hear right now. So there's industry, businesses out there now that are actually paying farmers to sequester carbon. So the way we do that is by no-tilling, by producing, keeping cover crops, keeping something green living on our fields all the time. Soil fertility, it is enhanced by cover crops, crop rotation, and of course animal manure. Cover crops increase the water holding capacity. It reduces weed pressure. We can use less herbicide. So everybody likes to hear that message, and we have been able to reduce the amounts of herbicide that we are putting on our crop with the use of cover crops. It reduces crop stress, reduces slug pressure. Anyone know what a slug is? It's that little worm that likes to eat all your vegetables and likes to eat our corn and likes to eat our soybeans. So we've had reduced pressure from that. Increases organic matter. Organic matter is things like crop residue that you let on your field from the previous year. It also is animal organic matter. It is also the microbes and everything in the soil. So all this is organic matter. So one important thing for you to remember today is that organic matter is measured by a percent. of organic matter in your soil. So 2%, pretty standard. 3% is real good. You can get up as high as 5% organic matter, and that will create more water holding capacity in your soil. So for every 1% of organic matter that you can hold in your soil, it will hold up to 20,000 gallons of water per acre. So it's important to us as farmers that we want to continue to work at increasing organic matter so that we can hold the water and nutrients in our soil. Carbon sequestration, I did touch on that a little bit. So we're saying treat your cover crop like a cash crop, not just like, well, it's out there, it's a nuisance, but I actually look at it as value because of what it's giving back to increasing the soil productivity. We like to build biological activity. It restores the soil's energy system, is stimulated by multi-species cover crops. So multi-species cover crops, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but rather than just planting cereal rye or some wheat or some barley, you can actually add different species to increase the value and nutrient content of your soil. It encourages beneficial insects. We have insects, oftentimes if you see a bug or a worm or something like that crawling across your garden plant, or for us, it's our fields. At one time, when I was younger and didn't understand this whole system, I thought it was a pest. So, spray it, get rid of it. We're understanding that there's more beneficial insects out there than there is detrimental insects. So the beneficials are actually out there attacking the bad guys. So we actually do not want to spray any insecticide to kill some of these critters out there. And the other big thing is a well-managed grazing system is the Cadillac for soil health because it recycles nutrients. You have a cow, you have beef cattle out there grazing. Well, they're going to eat, but it's also going to come out the back too. So it's a cycle. So all those nutrients that come out the back of the cow are going to go back into the soil. It's going to help generate energy to the soil, microbes and biological activity in the soil. That's going to help continue to create that cycle. And it also sequesters CO2, which is an important part of this whole system. Growing cover crops gives you three options. So number one, the top left hand there is grazing cattle. Cattle can go in there and graze and put on a lot of weight, and so that's why you can go to the store and pay $4 and $5 a pound for beef right now. The one on the right is you can actually make feed. You can harvest it for feed in the wintertime when the cattle don't have as much to graze. You can use it for feed. And then the bottom there is something that we're really have a lot of experience with, and that's planting into a living cover crop. And I'll talk about the advantages as we move through this. So this is out on our farm. We just recently, in the past year, put up some fence and planted some grass, and we are now raising some beef out, and there'll be some beef for sale. If you are interested, you can talk to Mark, and he'll get in contact with the right person. So planting green. A green living cover helps reduce soil moisture in the spring. And you say, well, why do you want to reduce your soil moisture in the spring? Don't you want moisture? Well, typically in the spring we have more than enough of rain. But it gives us the opportunity to get in and plant a little bit earlier, because that green living cover is actually still sucking up moisture into the plant. And so if you have heavy rains in the spring, you will see that this will help dry out the soils enough that you can get in and plant in an optimum time. But then in the summertime, you will be able to hold more of that moisture because of what you see right there. You have that cover, you have that armor laying there between the cornfield or between the corn rows that are actually going to help keep this soil from drying out. It's going to keep it from getting so hot. It's going to help hold back the weeds, and your herbicide will work so much better. And it also gives nutrients and food for the soil microbes. So I was talking about multi-species cover crops. So one of the ones that would be considered a multi-species is obviously more than one. But we have oats, rye, balanza, clover, and canola. So balanza, clover, and canola are ones that will provide nitrogen back into the soil. So it's a natural nitrogen source. We're not having to put as much fertilizer on, as much nitrogen on, so that there creates an opportunity to benefit not only by improving the soil, but also improving the nutrient content. So those are just a few of the different mixes that we've used over the years. This is a bar graph, or a chart that is showing how cover crop biomass can actually keep your soil cooler. So the top one, for instance, the blue line across there is no residue at all. No cover crop, basically bare soil. And it's hard to see, but it tops out at about 85 degrees. This here was something that I pulled off the internet, but it's certainly, I'll have something to back it up a little bit later. But you see where it starts there, May 29th. They take a reading and they measure it the whole way through the growing season on out to August the 14th. And you'll see that blue line is 85 degrees. The one that has the most biomass on, which is the rye residue, that's the purple line on the bottom, tops out at 82 degrees, the way it looks there. So you get, 3, 4, 5 degrees difference in temperature, which in the summertime, that's very important. Here's something that I did on our farm a couple of years ago. I measured the temperature. It was a 90-degree plus day. The one on the left, I put into the temperature probe into the soil where there was massive cover crop, massive biomass. And the temperature reading was 73.5 degrees. The one on the right was bare soil, next to my neighbor, that was 87.5 degrees. 14 degrees difference. So I don't know, crops are a little bit like humans. Humans can get pretty uncomfortable when it gets to 80, 90 degrees. But you add 14 degrees onto that, you are feeling like, if it's 14 degrees hotter tomorrow, you're going to say, man, it is hot. Well, the crops act a little bit the same way. The crops really want to shut down after it gets too hot. And so if we can keep the crops cooler in the summertime, that is going to potentially give more yield.
Jim, before you go, how deep is that measurement?
That was probably 3 inches into the soil. Mm-hmm. So how do we add value to our cover crop system? So we're incorporating legumes. So some of those that I listed, some of those cover crops like the balanza clover and and there was peas on there, there was canola on there. All those are legumes, and so all those add value. Hairy vetch, sun hemp, winter pea. It also reduces our nitrogen rates, improves our soil structure, improves our soil health, and increases our soil water holding capacity, builds organic matter. This here might be a little hard for some of you to see, but it's a tabletop infiltration test where we're measuring how much water actually infiltrates into a soil profile. So the one on the left there is actually both these samples came from our farm. NRCS did a technician training day at our farm several years ago, and so they took soil profiles. But the one on the left did not come from me. I got permission from a neighbor that does plowing to ask him if we could use some of his soil for this demonstration, and he reluctantly gave me permission. But the one on the right, the far right there, actually has been no-tilled for more than 30 years, has a lot of crop residue, biomass on it, and so they did the water infiltration test. So they pretty much dumped the water in up to about that line on each of those pans, and they had small holes in those top pans. They poured the water in at the same time, and then they wanted to see what happened. How much water is going to infiltrate, how much is going to run off. The one on the left, where there was no cover, no organic matter, it was plowed and worked. So you can clearly see how much brown water is in there. And there's actually some soil, some topsoil and nutrients laying on the bottom of that pan. The one on the right, yeah, there was just a little ran off, but it's very clear. That's, I think, a perfect example of what is happening out there on the large scale on these farms that aren't practicing. And I might say, this here one on the left, that button's too low for my fingers, might look like some of the water that could be running off of that ground here the other week out on Schaefer and Campus Road. Many of you know what I'm talking about, but there's major earth disturbance that's taking place out there right now, and I'm sure they're doing their best to keep the water, but those farms, actually, we do custom planting and combining for the gentleman that farmed that farm for many years, and it was not fun to watch that. Not fun to watch all that good soil go in a pile. But that's so. So this here, we looked before at the slide where it was runoff. Now we're looking here at what infiltrated. So the one on the left, you see has water that infiltrated. That there was the one that was no-tilled. That was the one that had all the cover crop on. That's what we want to see. We want to see the water infiltrating into the soil.
That's the one on the right now.
No, that's the one on the left. This one here is the cover crop that the water infiltrated. The one on the right is the one that was plowed, and there's no water that infiltrated that soil profile. It all ran off into your Conewaga stream. One of the other things that's very important to us then as farmers is to manage our manure. There is a lot of livestock manure in Lancaster County and in neighboring counties and in Pennsylvania as a whole. So one of the things that we've started doing some work with is doing manure incorporation. And so by doing that, we're getting the manure to stabilize in the soil. It's not running off, and we're also reducing the amount of odor that you'll get from the manure. So that there was incorporated into green living cover crop on that picture there. So we talk about nitrates. You know, you don't want nitrates in your water. And that's one thing that's important to us as farmers, is that we don't pollute our neighbors' wells and in the streams. So this here graph was taken at 19 different locations. They put 10,000 gallons of liquid hog manure on each of these locations, and then they measured the soil nitrate level 24 inches down into the soil profile. So, long story short, they used cover crop as part of this demonstration. They had one where there was no cover. So bare soil versus cover crop. There was a difference of 78 pounds of nitrate nitrogen at the 24-inch level. So we're saying, why not use cover crops? Your cover crops is being able to hold more of that nitrate nitrogen from leaching down into the soil profile. The future of cover crops and soil health, it's an understanding the value of cover crop below the soil surface, managing our soils to provide resources for biological activity and to improve our soil health. It's getting paid for increasing carbon in our soil, which here in Pennsylvania we have not found a viable option for that. Some of the Midwestern states, where they have thousands of acres of corn and soybeans, it might work for them, but we still feel we're doing a very good job at sequestering nitrogen, even though we're not selling carbon credits per se. And the future of drones. So you think of drones just to go out and take pretty pictures and things like that. Well, we're actually using it to manage crops, including cover crop seeding. So we have tried some of this technology where you have a drone that has a cover crop box and a spinner on, and he's going over the field spreading cover crop on this soybean field before it's even harvested. And so the purpose for that is to get that cover crop down into that canopy, down to the soil, and hopefully it will germinate and will actually start growing by the time we go to harvest the crop of soybeans. So there's another method that we're spreading some cover crop on soybeans that are just starting to dry down. And there is what we want it to look like. So this here there was a cover crop spun on this field before the soybeans. While the soybeans were still green, the leaves dropped, the crop started drying down, ready for harvest. And when it was time to harvest, there we have something green living and growing. And that's what we want to do. So this here is a little complex. But, you know, it's like it's the soil health wheel. It's a little bit like if you have a vehicle that doesn't have its tires balanced, it will shake, it will shimmy, your tires won't last very long. So soil health is a little bit the same way. If you don't have it balanced, the system is just not going to work. So I have on the outside, the continuous no-till is very important. But no-till by itself is not the complete answer. You need to have a lot of other components in order to be able to reach the soil health that you're wanting to establish. So we're wanting to manage our manure. We'll start right there. We want to manage our pests that I talked about. We want to avoid compaction. And you can avoid compaction by having good, healthy soils, by no-tilling, by using cover crops. You want to integrate crops and livestock. We talked about that. Diverse cover crop rotation. So by using corn, soybeans, wheat, barley, all those, diversity is an important part. Planting cover crops, diversity of cover crops. We talked about that. Maximizing living roots. So we want to make sure that we can get the most value out of all the roots from all the cover crops that we have growing on our ground. Growing living plants, keeping the soil green, managing carbon, using interseeding. I did not talk about that much, but that's something in some part of the states is working well, and that's planting a cover crop into, say, standing corn, where you're going to have corn growing, you're going to have a cover crop growing. But we struggled some with that here in this part of the state, but some parts it works well. Planting green. Yeah. My thumb's too big for this, John. Yeah. There we go. Planting green and enhancing soil armor. We talked about that, and managing our nutrients. So to end up here, we have a lot of things in life that we can't plan for. We don't know what the next day will bring, but we need to learn to adjust. And it's a little bit that way in farming. And I like this saying that when the winds in your life change, maybe it's just a sign to adjust your sails. That's all I have. Is there any questions? Yes?
So, as a kid, my father made me, with a fork or a pitchfork, turn over the garden every spring.
Uh-huh.
And it took a day. We had a big garden. Are you telling me that he was wrong? Because I'm going to see him Monday and I want to have.
He's still alive. Be careful.
It was right for him at that time.
But now he's wrong. There's a better way.
Jim, he will corner you.
So that would be like if I would ask you in your business, if you're doing the same thing today as what you did 20 years ago. Likely not. Were you wrong? No, because that's what you knew back then. I'm not going to tell anybody that they're doing something wrong.
Nice try.
But I will encourage them. Like this gentleman back here, maybe your dad should take some lessons from him.
So in the past, he would be just lazy because he didn't want to turn the soil. He was just lazy. Now we realize he's smart. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that. There is. Yes.
I would add to that you just take the pitchfork and help yourself dig your garden again and plant the green plant so that it holds the water and does everything else that you need to do.
But you don't even have to use a pitchfork. You can still plant something green without using the pitchfork.
So why aren't more people? Is the crop yield less? Is this harder? Because I see Amish out there, these poor mules suffering, dragging. Why aren't more people doing this?
Some would say that they're not listening to the value of what you can receive from doing this. The Amish, it has become a challenge to adopt these methods, but there are Amish now that are no-tilling tobacco, which is fairly new in the last 5 years. But I have an Amish neighbor that just did that for the first this year, and he thinks it's his best-looking tobacco. So And it's a lot of having the right equipment, and it takes a lot more management to manage a system like this than it is just going out with your plow, plowing the field, working the ground, because now you're trying to manage this cover crop that you got growing, and if you don't have the right equipment, it cannot be it could be a bad experience for you. Yes.
One more, it's, at Masonic Village, we have, 80 some gardeners.
Hmm.
And it would be another good place for you to come out and meet, see what's happening. And it's, Ralph, what is it, a couple of acres we have in gardening?
That would be an interesting discussion, because there's a lot of older people out there that's the way they've always done it. They've tilled their soil for the garden, and
Drives me crazy.
drives you crazy. Well,
Now we know two things that are driving them crazy.
is it
Starlings and pitchforks.
is there a time? Is there a time when all you gardeners get together to have a get together that I could come talk to them?
Yes.
Pitchfork buyback program.
Yes.
Can you go back to that infiltration slide?
Okay.
This is a challenge.
That one?
Next one.
Next one?
So it looks like on the right, that's like twig type stuff, and the water just run right through that. So what you're saying, the water is absorbed by all that.
Well, it's absorbed by that, and it also goes down through that residue as well. Maybe the next one will show it.
Two different parts of the season.
Oh, I see, it goes through into there's another container that
Yeah, the left one just completely runs off.
Yeah.
The other one doesn't
So-
run off, but it goes into the field.
So this whole pan is full from top to bottom of that soil, and this is top to bottom. Now the twigs, which you called, and that's okay because you didn't know what it is. That's actually soybean stubble residue left from after harvesting the crop of soybeans. So that's what that is. So like right under that is soil, but because it's been no-tilled and it has a lot of root systems and soil life in it, it's going to absorb a lot more moisture. You can.
When did the no-till theory or whatever, when did it start? And where did it start?
It started back in the early 60s, they tell me, is when the first no-till, it was actually an Alice Chalmers corn planter that was developed to plant into undisturbed soil.
What part of the country?
That was out in one of the Midwestern states, but there are still some of those planters around. So the No-Till Alliance has summer field days, and this year we move around. We have one in the western part of the state and one in the eastern part of the state. This year it was down in southern Lancaster County, and there's actually a gentleman down there, an older gentleman, that still has one of these Alice Chalmers corn planters. And we had it at our field day, and we actually did a demonstration of planting into cover crop, and that created a lot of excitement.
And so you started doing no-till 2005, did I hear?
So yeah, it's more than 30 years ago. Yeah, 35 years ago.
What was the percentage of people that were doing no-till back then?
So presently, the state, their estimate is like 78%, almost 80% is no-till, but then the cover crop is less than that. Some of guys just haven't adopted that yet. But back when I started, it was probably in the 40% maybe. It was fairly low, but it's been catching on. Mm-hmm. John.
From a stormwater perspective.
Yes, sir.
I love it. I
and I wish I know most of the farmers in West Donegal no-till,
Mhm.
but not many of them cover crop.
I think you should buy some MS4 credits from the farmers.
That's what I was
Well,
gonna say.
we've talked to DEP about that, about trying to DEP is like trying to move a mountain, but that's the idea for the next round of MS4 is let's really promote the whole cover crop idea, because that to me is the answer. That and manure incorporation are the two answers to keeping nutrients out of the stream bed. And
How about if you reduce our tax liability for incorporating these good
absolutely.
practices?
No, but if we
Don't
get
worry, I've talked to
municipalities-
Mount Joy Township about it.
From an MS4 perspective, if the municipalities could get credit for acres in no-till and cover crop, and then we could get the credit for that, and then we could pass along the tax savings to the farmers for
Mhm.
doing that. But DEP has to bless that as a system, and that's the problem. Municipal separated stormwater system. So MS4 is, if you're a municipality that has a particular population density in your urbanized area, you have to apply for a permit from the state to allow your stormwater to go into the water to the common. So Kenoi Township gets a waiver because they're a small township. West Donegal has to do it. The borough has to do it. Mount Joy Township has to do it. Every 5 years, you have to submit a new pollution reduction plan. We just did a stream bank project on the Kenoi Creek as part of our pollution reduction plan. So we're getting ready to go into this next 5-year cycle, which they've now extended the current cycle by 3 years. So we have no idea what's coming. But what they're telling us is they're going to focus on nutrients and they're going to focus on volume reduction. How do you reduce the amount of volume? There's only one way to reduce the amount of volume, and that's no-till and cover crop. It's got to go in the ground. So there's a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to say to the group, Steve, I'm working on getting Steve Groff lined up to come and talk.
Okay.
He's also no-till cover crop, but he's also doing no-till and cover crop with industrial hemp. And that's
Mhm.
one. He told me, call me at the end of the year after I get through the hemp season. But
Right. They actually had I don't know if you've seen it advertised, they called it the Hemp Summit this year in Lancaster County. And so he was a big part of that.
But I hope to have him as a speaker in the year.
Yep. Yeah,
I didn't realize you guys put hog manure, but being that you're injecting it,
Mhm.
I don't smell it. But if you grow up in Lancaster County, you can differentiate between all the animal crap that's being spread on the
Oh,
field.
that's good.
Yeah. The
But-
pig is the worst.
Fresh or stale?
Liquid pig is like the worst. It makes your eyes water. But I drive past your farm multiple times a day. I don't think I've ever smelled
Good.
there.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, so it really needs.
Yeah.
You need to loan that machine to other farms.
Well, there's machines out there to do it now, and more farmers are starting to do it, realizing the value of it.
Keeps the nutrient in the ground and
Yeah,
not going into the stream.
yeah.
And I had a question. Does Mark really work there?
Yeah, he does. He does. Yes, sir.
The most impactful visual I've ever seen was about a 3-foot slice of soil, and side by side, this was tilled, plowed, and this was no-till, and you could just see the soil down 3 feet. The no-till, there were roots going way down. The soil was dark. I mean, it was just rich. But over here, it was like anemic.
Mm-hmm.
The visual did it.
You've got it. You've got it. It is exactly right. If he was showed a soil profile on a slide, like you said, you could see the roots, but you could see actually worms and see worm channels, and that's all water infiltration.
I would suggest getting that slide or something like that, because that's a selling.
Well, I only had a short time. I would have had a lot more to share. I will say that, do you realize how quickly our farm ground is getting built to brick and mortar? there is data to show that there is 200,000 acres that have been lost in the last 5 years in our nation. That is productive agriculture ground. 200,000 acres have been lost in the last 5 years in our nation. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of food. So thank you very much, folks.